and it has sparked a national conversation on race, specifically on college campuses, but nationally on race relations in the United States. And following up to that national conversation, Brother Jefferson thought it might be wise that we assemble a few college graduates that knows what it's like to experience those atrocities. And we've pulled together a panel. We're going to have questions and dialogue, have a conversation about being students of color at predominantly white higher education institutions and in corporate America. We've also engaged on all social media platforms. So as you engage with the panel and you're listening to the dialogue, please feel free to mention us on Twitter at PBC Aurora. You can also find us on Instagram and on Facebook as well. And we really want to hear your feedback as we go through. On this morning's panel, we have Jamar Jefferson, who graduated from Illinois State University in 2005 with a bachelor's degree in philosophy. He is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated and is currently a property construction underwriter for Zurich Insurance in downtown Chicago. Welcome to the panel, Brother Jefferson.
Thank you.
We also have with us this morning Kenyo Gaston, who went to The Ohio State University, where he received a Bachelor's of Science in Pharmaceutical Science in 2010 and a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology in 2014. He is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. KG, as he is called, has returned home to Chicago and is a first-year student in the Master's of Public Health program at the University of Illinois at Chicago. We welcome KG to the panel and KG. Morgan Jefferson is a 2012 graduate of the University of Missouri-Columbia, also known as Mizzou. She graduated with a degree in interdisciplinary studies with an emphasis in communication and social psychology. She is currently the operations coordinator for Soldier Field in Chicago. We welcome Morgan to Progressive. Stacy Harper. Stacy received an undergraduate degree from Southern University and A&M College, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he majored in secondary education with a concentration in English. He also has a master's degree in educational leadership from Olivet Nazarene University down in Bourbonnais. He is currently in his 14th year of teaching at Oswego High School, where he started at age 16. So panelists, we've seen in the news the outcry of months, if not years, of ignored racial slurs and perhaps even racial injustice. Was this your experience as a college student? Did you experience racial injustice on your respective campuses?
Let me go first. Definitely. Illinois State University, there was definitely some type of racial discrimination going on there. Especially, I would say, the first one I endured was I hadn't stepped foot on campus yet. There was actually when you drive into, I'm not even sure some people have been to Bloomington or Illinois, but there used to be a sign right off of the expressway when you drive in. There's literally a street sign that has it's racism, and it has a circle with a line through it, and it says, "Not in our town." And just the fact that that had to even be there when you're driving into the town of Bloomington, which is predominantly college town, is just, I mean, imagine first time freshman, you're driving in and you're excited to go to school, and that's the first thing you see. You know? And then there was also things in the classroom that I experienced. There are certain classes that were there to they were there for first-time students, and one particular thing I had was the Cultural Center was having an art gallery exhibit for the students that actually participated in paintings and things like that, with their paintings. And one exhibit was actually a clown that was painted upside down. He had a black face, and he was actually hanging from a trapeze, and he had kind of like some features of an ape. And in that picture, and mind you, there are about 100 pictures around, and I am the only one in the class that's visiting, that's black, while we're visiting, and the teacher immediately turned to me and asked me, what do you think of this art? And I saw it coming. I did see it coming before, and actually I took 2 steps back away from the art picture and kind of mingled myself within the crowd before she could even ask me that question, and she still managed to find me. And at that particular moment, I was caught off guard. But I said to her, I just let her know it's art. I didn't give her what she wanted. I think she really wanted me to maybe say something as if it's offensive, I don't appreciate it, but I didn't give her what she wanted. But at the same time, I was very offended by that, and that was my freshman year. And so, I mean, I encountered way more than that, but I want to give other people the opportunity to explain their experience as well. So,
my first experience at Ohio State, where I had a cross profile, essentially it was my very first day, kind of like Jamar. I got there, my first day, I hadn't set foot in class, I hadn't gotten to my dorm. Me, my mom, my dad, the truck, all my stuff is in the back. We got there, and the way housing is arranged on really big campuses, they have different lanes for people to go to that designate whatever dorms they're going to go to. So we got going through all the maze of traffic, and we get about maybe a block from our dorm. We get stopped by one of the police officers that have a police officer in different places to make sure the flag hanging from your rear view directs you in the right person, in the right direction. So we got there, and the officer stops and he looks at my dad. My dad's much lighter than me. He looks at my mom, who's much more starker than me, and he comes over to the expedition and he says, he looks at the plate from Illinois. He says, "What are you guys doing all the way out here?" And my dad looked at him and he said, "My son got a partial scholarship to Ohio State. That's where he decided to come." Officer goes, "Oh, just a partial, huh?" And I peeked up front just to see what was going on. My mom partially rolls the window up on him. And he said, my dad says, "Well, this is one of the best schools in the country he was able to go, so yeah, we wanted to bring him here." And the officer goes, "There aren't any good schools in Illinois?" And my dad goes, "We're from the south side of Chicago. Yes, there are plenty of good schools, but he wants to get out of state. He wants to get a different experience." I was kind of surprised that my dad was going along with this at this point. But it kind of gave me, it let me know 2 different things. My dad is very hostile, period. So to watch my father engage with this white officer on one of the biggest days of my life just kind of taught me that was the level of integrity that I needed to be able to uphold from that point forward. It also taught me day one, before I even step out of the car, that this is probably going to be a part of your experience and you need to get used to it. So my first couple of days in class where it's me and another 40, 50 other predominantly white students. I've been in class where there might have been 25 out of hundreds. And I would imagine that's the similar experience from everybody. It just becomes it almost becomes a part of it, and there's an element of the discrimination that you have to be able to accept and move past in order to complete doing what you set out to do.
I went to Mizzou, so obviously it's in the media now and it's pretty public that there's racial injustice there. And my experience at Mizzou, of course, there were a lot of discrimination going on there. My freshman year, there was a racial slur spray painted outside of a statue. Outside my dorm, there was a statue out there, and they spray painted a racial slur there. My sophomore year, there were cotton balls spread throughout the lawn of the Black Culture Center, the only facility that we actually have on campus to kind of call our own. And it also happened to be the only building on campus without cameras, so it was really hard to catch the people that did it, of course. In my junior year, I was walking down the street with friends of mine, and at night, just walking around, and a pickup truck comes past and starts circling us, calling us out of our names in words, go home in words, So Yeah, like, I think we all have similar experiences with that, or being called out, or being the only African American in the class. I know I don't look it, but being the only African American in the class, and having that happen on campus is discouraging, but you have to keep going because you have to be above that. You have to be better than that. And I don't get upset when that happens. A lot of people at my school did, and they wanted to riot, and they wanted to fight, and they wanted to, do the hunger strike. But honestly, you have to be above that. You have to look over that. Of course, you should make it public, and of course, you should make your concerns known so that everybody can feel comfortable on campus, especially for future generations. However, like Neil said, you can't let them stop you from being there. I deserve to be there. I have every right to be there. And honestly, I just feel bad for them. You just have to pray for people like that, because if they knew better, they would do better. So it's unfortunate for them. I feel bad for them.
I think, and we're going to pick up a follow-up for Stacy, but I think one of the recurring themes in the conversation so far is that most of these instances were instituted by folks in authority, professors, police officers. And what's absolutely critical is that we teach our young people how to respond appropriately in instances like this. Because what we see on the news is there's an act, the police officer approaches an individual, and then the individual instantly goes into defensive mode, which is not always the right answer. So it's absolutely critical that our young people understand how to respond when they face instances like this. Now, Stacy, you attended an HBCU, predominantly Black university. So can you describe how, if at all, that campus environment prepared you to work in a non-historically Black context?
Well, for me, it was really a preparation even before I got to college. My mother had gone to a historically Black college. All my brothers went to a historically Black college, my sister. And so they had taught me that you're gonna have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So even going into Southern University, that same kind of idea was kind of inbred in us that whole time we were there. I would say the one thing that was very eye-opening was seeing what I call, quote, all kinds of Black people. Because I was so used to seeing what I saw growing up in my neighborhood and who I was around. That was the first time I had ever seen a Black Catholic, a Black Episcopalian, people who were the Cosbys, as opposed to people who were, living in the worst shack you could see. But all these same people had that same idea in mind to further themselves, to better themselves, to prepare themselves for a world that was not going to be so kind to them. And I think that historically Black environment kind of embraced that idea and prepared us in that regard.
I think that's interesting. I remember as an undergrad participating in things that were quote-unquote non-Black, right, for the first time, and it really caught me off guard being in the yard, and now I'm playing team Frisbee. What is this? And sometimes we can put our blinders on and focus only on what we've been taught to accept, right? And it often will make our experience very narrow because we're not willing to broaden our scope and embrace things that are new to us. Final question for the panel this morning. There are many scholars, Henry Louis Gates Jr. at Princeton, Shelby Steele, CNN's Juan Thomas, there are Fox News' Juan Thomas. There are many Black scholars that would suggest that we live in a postmodern society or a post-racial society where race is no longer the primary threat or roadblock to Black success for African Americans. What's your take on that?
Postmodern?
Post-racial.
Post-racial society? Post-racial, I would say I would disagree. I experience racism in my job constantly, on a regular basis. Actually, as a matter of fact, I had a conference this past October where all the underwriters at my particular position came in from the whole Midwest, and I was literally on 70 underwriters, the only Black face. Unfortunately, I was the only one whose room got canceled on that one. When I went to shake the director, the supervisor, director of the underwriter's hand in front of the managers. When I went to shake his hand, I said, "How's it going?" And he actually put his hands in his pockets. But one thing I would say at the University at Illinois State University, this is things that I had to learn what I experienced, and then I actually had to learn, I know how to endure this in order to continue. It taught me that. When I went to college, one thing I was good at, academics. That's what got me there. You study, you do the work, you take the test, you pass, you're good. But one thing I struggled with was the political aspect of it. And I had to learn that very quickly. And that translated into my corporate life. And so I would definitely say you're still going through it. And it's just gonna remain something that I can teach my kids as well.
Yeah, to Jamar's point, living in a post-racial society doesn't mean that racism is completely omitted from the equation. So it's just a different form of racism. Racism now isn't as overt as it once was. In sociology, we learned a term called colorblind racism, where a lot of racist things that happen to you, you personally feel, but they aren't given or displayed in a way that's direct. Everything is real subtle. You're outcasted, or you're not included on things, or certain things are brought to your attention before anybody else, or you kind of get admitted from a particular equation, or you get grouped with the rest of the black people that are around. It's just a different kind of racism. So you can't not feel it. It's a stressor among anybody who's African American. So you can't ignore it, but there's a level of attention that you can call to it. And whether the person who's giving it is being intentional or not, because sometimes racism is now so subtle that people do it and they don't necessarily know that they're doing it. And when that happens, you just have to remember that as wrong as it is and as bad as you feel in the moment, like, there's something else to accomplish at the time. You have to think about that thing and just focus on getting the job done in the most mannerable way possible.
I agree with both of them. At Mizzou, I was exposed to a lot of things, something I like to call charming racism. You're so pretty for a black girl, or you're so smart for a black girl, or, this is my black friend Morgan, you get that a lot. So I would say that racism is still very alive and present. I mean, if you look at President Obama, obviously all the backlash he got for being the first black president, even though we've come so far with him in his presidency, it's still not enough because he's black. Or with the racial injustice going on with police discrimination. I mean, obviously, racism is still very alive and present. My brother and I, Jamar's my brother, by the way, our mother taught us, white people are great, that's fine, and they'll say hi to you and they'll love you and, oh, Morgan's great, I love Morgan. But they'll never let you forget that you're black. So as long as you remember that, they'll never let you forget that you're black. So as long as you know that and you understand that they are going to be who they are, and accept that for who they are and rise above that. I'm the only African American in my office currently, so I'm always getting, oh, did you see that video? Lil Wayne, just assuming that I would know, of course, because I'm black. So as long as you know that, and remember that they'll never let you forget that. I'm not saying that everybody's a racist, that everybody's out to get you, but it is an underlying thing, and it may be subtle, and it's always charming, but it's always going to be there, so.
And to kind of piggyback on that, the term, I don't know if I agree with the term post-racial as I agree with post-segregation. Because just the idea that, well, for me personally, I'm so invested in kids, and when I see what happens, when I hear the majority, and like Morgan said, sometimes it's just the little subtle things that I hear with kids that bothers me, but I tell them that they're gonna have to learn to take what they've heard and really look at the nuances behind it. Because so often I've heard kids, the majority tell some of the minority kids, hey, can you touch that backboard? Can I touch your hair? I've even had, I think my second year, one of the teachers had a project, and the kids were presenting theirs, and it was a Langston Hughes poem that was done in its dialect. And so, the two white kids came in, they were performing it, but they came in blackface. And so, one of my students came to me, and she was really hurt about that. And so I had to, in a not so nice way, check that teacher about what she had done. Because you have to definitely consider everyone in the class, even right now. We are, a couple of teachers and I are working on a program to educate the white teachers to be more sensitive to who's in their class. And I definitely want the kids to be prepared for what's happening out there. These things may not be intentional, but you do have to read behind it. My mother was around during segregation, so those ideas are still kind of in me. And I know for my daughter, I know she's only 2 years old, but even now I want to prepare her for what she might encounter. Because what you're talking about, 1968? It's only 50 years ago. So I don't know if those ideas are totally gone, but I pray to God that soon, by the time that she's 18, 19 years old, that whole idea will be gone. So I definitely think it's just us preparing our kids for what they are about to endure.
Thank you. And just a correction that the Fox News, it's Juan Williams, in case you were looking to reference. He's the author of Enough and several other books. Again, Juan Williams is his name at Fox News. But this is the first discussion of a 3-part series that we'll do. This is a monocultural discussion. Everyone on the panel is African American. The next discussion won't be monocultural. So we'll bring in folks from, as Stacy says, the majority culture, if you will, and Hispanics as well, to diversify the conversation, to get a plural perspective. And then the third part of the conference, we'll hear from our own high school students, what their experiences have been and what's their take from their perspective. Very important conversation that we absolutely must continue as we raise diverse children to prepare them to go into a very hostile environment. Thank you to our panelists this morning.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, please.
So, like Reverend Page said, we are going to continue on with these discussions, and we do have our Twitter feed up on the screen. Not sure if you all can see it because of the sunlight. However, my sister actually had her tweet a picture of the congregation, so you all are actually up there right now in that picture.
I'm sorry.
But actually, so when we have these discussions, I encourage you all, if you all have Twitter, or if you want to get on Twitter, you can, and then you can tweet your things that you might want to say or you might want to engage in during the conversation. You can tweet those up, and we'll have those feed onto the.
Can you give that Twitter name again?
Sure, it's at PBC Aurora.
Okay.
And that's the same handle for our Facebook and our Instagram account as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.